My presentation is over underground coal mining in West Virginia. Since the early 1900s, West Virginia has been coal country. While the demand for coal has been on the decline due to Obama-era restrictions and regulations, as well as a rising demand for renewable energy, coal still generates almost 30% of U.S. electricity. While Trump rolled back many of the regulations that Obama had put in place, the demand for coal did not rise as promised. For many people, for different reasons, the question of whether or not the coal industry should be shut down is controversial. For the 12,000 miners in West Virginia, the argument is personal. For people like Albert Coburn, mining is his livelihood. As a father of 3, he depends on coal mining to support his family. Mary Jordan of the Washington Post writes that though coal mining can be risky business, for many miners who are skilled at what they do, the benefits are worth the risks. However, critics against the coal industry have become louder in recent years, even with Trump's support of the industry. Critics blame the coal industry for contributing to global warming and point towards the environmental damage and health risks that mining coal causes as reasons enough to stop coal mining once and for all. Those in the coal industry are quick to point out the benefits coal has contributed to the U.S. economy. The U.S. coal industry still employs 51,000 people, according to NPR Marketplace. Further, this number does not include all the coal-related jobs that help the industry function. Many who argue to keep the coal industry alive use the Industrial Revolution as evidence of the importance of coal. Because of coal and other fossil fuels, life expectancy almost doubled. New technologies improved communication, transportation, and industrial production. None of this would have been possible without the investment of fossil fuels. In fact, countries with higher energy consumption also have higher standards of living. There's not only a correlation between greater wealth and energy consumption, it is the driving force. While the United States makes up only 5% of the world population, it consumes 25% of total global energy and has one of the highest living standards. For people who are against coal mining, their main arguments are generated from the data collected on global warming. According to Michelle Nahas of National Geographic, coal produces 39% of global carbon dioxide emissions. It is one of the highest contributors to anthropogenic climate change. There are also many external costs that mining coal has on the land and health of people living around coal mines. The data shows that these concerns cannot simply be brushed away. From a scientific perspective, it's important to look at the ecological impacts of mining in West Virginia. One serious problem with mining, according to Greenpeace, is the collapse of earth into the underground mines, also called subsidence. After coal is extracted, the pillars and the structures used to support the ground above are removed, which often leads to the collapse of the mines. Subsidence can interfere with landscapes and ecological habitats, as well as create serious damages to buildings and other infrastructure. Not only that, underground mining brings a huge amount of waste, earth, and rock to the surface. When this waste comes in contact with air and water, it often becomes toxic, creating something called acid mine drainage. The water takes on toxic levels of minerals and heavy metal. It becomes an orange color and contaminates groundwaters, rivers, and soil, which affects the plants, animals, and humans that depend on the water for survival. For Casey, a West Virginia resident, orange water has become the norm. Her real name was changed in the BBC report on polluted water in rural Appalachia to protect her identity. For more than a decade, her water has been polluted with iron, sulfur, and even arsenic. Her washing machine often stops working, and her water supply is ruined. She and her husband no longer cook or bathe with the water. It stains their skin and clothes. They have an hour drive to go get the drinking and cooking water they need for themselves and their kids. Another compelling reason to end coal mining is the resurgence of an epidemic called black lung disease, which has taken a toll on miners. Black lung disease is caused when the victim breathes in air that is polluted with coal dust. The coal dust lines the airways and causes inflammation. Eventually, scarring occurs in the lungs and makes it difficult to breathe. In the last decade, the disease has doubled, according to joint research done by NPR and Center for Public Integrity, or CPI. Howard Burks of NPR writes that the federal regulators in the mining industry failed to protect the coal miners. Although they knew miners were breathing excessive amounts of coal mine dust, adequate protections were not enacted. Creation care is a critical element to the Christian faith. From a theological perspective, the very reality that coal mining is so destructive to the environment would suggest that the practice is in violation with the biblical mandate for humans to care for the earth, as stated in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. In Genesis 1, the first book of the Bible, it begins with the creation story. It is written, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, 'Let there be light.' And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness." The story continues through verses 4 through 10. God creates water, sky, and land and calls it good. In verses 11 through 13, God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees in the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with the seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. The story then moves to the creation of stars and animals until the world is teeming with life. His final creation is humankind. Throughout the story, God celebrates that which he creates and calls it good. God's one special command to humans was to rule over all the living things that God had created. God's indication of rulership is not made flippantly. Humans are to be responsible for the earth and to care for it as carefully as it was created. The story illustrates the way we are to live today in relation to the earth and all the living things in it. Another important element to the Christian faith is the command given by God to care for and love humanity. The Bible is full of references to love one another. In Matthew 22, verses 37 through 40, Jesus is asked what the greatest commandment is. He replies that it is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Loving one's neighbor is considered just as highly important as loving the Creator. This is significant when we consider who is affected by our burning of coal. In West Virginia, those living around coal mines are deeply affected by the activity. Clean water is a scarce commodity due to pollution, making life incredibly difficult. Statistically, people of color are more likely to be affected by the dangerous chemicals that are released in the process of burning coal. Finally, while the U.S. contributes high emissions of carbon dioxide, countries that contribute very little to anthropogenic climate change are more likely to be affected. Clean energy is an important solution to ending our dependence on coal. Solar panels, wind turbines, and other renewable energy sources are becoming more affordable. Green energy jobs can replace mining in West Virginia and other locations. Additionally, a carbon tax should be implemented across the globe to reduce the consumption of fossil fuels by producers and consumers alike. As we transition to a more sustainable future, energy consumption will continue to rise. We just have to make sure the energy consumed is renewable and does not harm the planet. These solutions will not be easy to implement. Questions still remain about the process. As we consider next steps, I wonder if it is fair to ask economies like China to give up their coal production when they're seeing quality of life for their citizens rise. Further problematic, Do economies with limited resources have the funds necessary to implement renewable energy resources? These questions and more should be considered when discussing solutions to our energy problem. Thank you.